Hudson River Radio. Your dog likes us.
Ski Barn. Live life outside. At Ski Barn, we believe that getting kids the safest and very best ski and snowboard equipment is important. That's why we are stocked with the very best seasonal rental equipment. We proudly feature Rosinal, Volkel, Solomon, Burton, and K2. And if your kids outgrow their boots during the season, we'll refit them at no charge. Plus, with every rental, we include Ski Barn's free passport book with over $1,000 in coupons and lift ticket offers. Redeem just a few, and the savings will pay for your rental. Also come in and check out our huge selection of winter apparel. We have something for everyone. At Ski Barn, we believe life is most enjoyed outdoors. Ski Barn in Paramus, Wayne, Lawrenceville, Shrewsbury, and online at skibarn.com. Ski Barn, the goods, the people, the passion.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Angel Quest with Karen Noe on HudsonRiverRadio.com.
Hi, welcome to the Angel Quest show. I'm very excited to be here on HudsonRiverRadio.com. My name is Karen Noe, and I'm a psychic medium and author of Your Life After Their Death, Through the Eyes of Another, The Rainbow Follows the Storm, and the soon-to-be-released The We Consciousness. My guest today is Garnet Schulhauser. Garnet is a retired lawyer who lives near Victoria on Vancouver Island with his wife, Kathy, and his little dog, Abby. After practicing corporate law for over 30 years in Calgary with his two blue chip law firms, he retired in 2008, and his first book, Dancing on a Stamp, was published in 2012. In Dancing on a Stamp, Garnet recounts how his life changed dramatically one day when he was confronted on the street by a homeless man named Albert, who was actually a wise spirit in disguise. This seemingly chance encounter launched a provocative dialogue with Albert, who disclosed startling new revelations about the true nature as eternal souls, the cycle of reincarnation on Earth, and the afterlife that awaits us all. Garnet's second book, Dancing Forever with Spirit, describes his encounter with Albert, who guided him on a series of astral adventures to visit the spirit side, the Akashic Records, distant planets with fascinating life forms, and a human civilization that made the shift to the new Earth. His third book, Dance of the Heavenly Bliss, continued the saga of his astral trips with Albert, who took him to meet Gaia, the consciousness of Mother Earth, a human civilization on another planet that is ruled by women, and many fascinating souls, including Moses, Jesus, Mother Mary, and the goddess Athena on the spirit side, who shared with him tales of their lives on Earth. Garnet describes his most recent astral travels in his fourth book, Dance of Eternal Rapture, including encounters with Muhammad, Buddha, Mary Magdalene, and Jesus, another conversation with Gaia, and a journey to Earth in a parallel universe where there is much less violence and stress, due to a couple of quirks in the history of the planet. This will be the third time Garnet will be on the Angel Quest show, so I know it's going to be an amazing show. So, hi, Garnet. How are you?
I'm fine, Karen. How are you?
I know it's very early where you are. What time is it there?
7:35.
Oh, thank you so much for getting up bright and early to be with us today.
No problem. I'm delighted to be on your show.
So, congratulations on your latest book. And before we talk about that one, could you tell us a little bit about your first encounter with your spirit guide, Albert?
Sure. It was back in 2007. I was still practicing law then, and I went for a stroll one sunny afternoon in May, walking down the street, and all of a sudden, seemingly out of nowhere, a homeless man just jumped in front of me. And he looked like a typical homeless man with sort of scraggly hair and long beard and dirty, slept-in clothes. But there was something very different about him because he had these amazing, sparkling, dazzling blue eyes. And his gaze, he was looking intently at me, and it seemed like he was looking right into the depths of my soul. He was looking right down into to the very bottom of my essence, and I sensed that he knew everything about me, everything I'd ever said or done, and all my hopes and aspirations and my fears and anxieties, and he knew all. I sensed that he knew all this, even though we'd never met before. And at the same time, his gaze was sending me this wave of pure, unconditional love that was basically infusing my whole body with an amazing sense of peace and security. So I stood there like a deer caught in the headlights, and I'm not sure how long I stood there. I was quite enjoying this wave of love he was sending me. And then he broke the spell by saying to me, "Why are you here?" And then he promptly disappeared into a nearby store. And when I finally collected my wits, I went into the store to find him, walked up and down. He was nowhere to be seen. I went back out on the street, hoping to spot him on the street somewhere, walked up and down for 10 or 15 minutes, but he had basically disappeared into thin air. So I resolved that night that I would go back to that street the next day, and so I did. Same street, same time, and I was hoping to find him. And I walked up and down for 20 minutes or so. I was about to give up hope when I spotted him sitting all alone on a bench. So I went up to him and I said, "Who are you, and why did you stop me the other day?" And he said, "I'm a soul just like you. I'm here to answer your questions and help you on your journey." And so that was the beginning of a dialogue. I sat down on the bench beside him, and we started a dialogue that went off and on for the next several months. And he told me that his name was Albert, and he was one of my spirit guides in disguise. And he said that I was the only person who could see him in physical form. And I can also touch him because I reached out and touched his shoulder, and he was like real, meat and bones. But I was the only one who could do that. And if anybody else had been walking by the bench that day when I was talking to him, they would have seen me sitting by myself, talking to myself. So anyway, that was the beginning of this dialogue. He proved to be a very wise, compassionate, loving spirit. His mission was to engage a number of messengers to spread his message to all humanity. I was chosen as one of his. And he told me early on that he wanted me to write a book about his revelations. And I was a bit reluctant at first, but eventually I caved in, and I wrote the manuscript for Dancing on a Stamp, which is my first book, and that entails the dialogue I had with Albert, where he reveals a number of very interesting, sometimes startling revelations about the cycle of reincarnation and our journeys on Earth.
It's a fascinating book. It was wonderful. And then your second book, Dancing Forever with Spirit, describes a series of astral adventures you took with Albert. So how did that one come about?
Well, that was a bit unusual. I had during my dialogue for the first book, we basically communicated by telepathy. He no longer, after the first 3 visits, he no longer showed up as the homeless man. We just communicated by telepathy. And then for Dancing Forever with Spirit, I just awoke in my bedroom one night, and I saw this sort of ghost-like, ethereal figure standing in the doorway of my bedroom. And when it moved closer to the bed, I could see it was my old friend Albert, my spirit guide, except he was in astral form. And he said that he's coming to take me on a series of astral trips to various places, the spirit side, other places in the universe, because he wanted me to write about what I saw and heard on these travels. So then he just literally reached out, pulled my astral body out of my physical body, and we rose up to the ceiling, up to the clouds, and hovered above a high point above our beautiful planet. And then he eventually led me through a shimmering doorway to the spirit side, where I began my sort of first astral trip with him.
Can you share one of the things that you saw there or felt?
Yeah, well, the very first thing I saw, basically once I went through this doorway, I was in this beautiful meadow with lush grass and tall trees and wildflowers. It was absolutely a beautiful place. And we walked up a path to the top of a small hill. And on the top of the hill, I could see down on the other side was a group of souls that appeared to be waiting for me. And as we walked closer to them, my heart skipped a beat because I recognized who they were. They were my mother and father and brother and grandparents and aunts and uncles who'd already passed over from the earth plane. They were my welcoming party. And to top it all off, my little dog, Oscar, who had passed away about 10 years before, he came running from behind the crowd over to me, eager to see me with his little tail wagging his whole body. And so it was it was a wonderful sort of first encounter on the spirit side. And Albert said basically that's what all of us will encounter when we pass from the earth plane. We'll be met by a welcoming party of our deceased relatives who will be there to give us a warm welcome and make us feel comfortable on the spirit side. So that was sort of a preview of what will happen to me when I finally pass from the earth plane. So that was a very interesting encounter. And then we went into this beautiful white city called Gaia on the spirit side, and we ultimately ended up having a meeting with the Council of Wise Ones, which is a committee of very wise, advanced souls whose job it is to oversee all the incarnations on Earth. And so that was an incredibly sort of first trip with Albert, and things just got better from there.
Fascinating. And then, on the spirit side, you had a meeting with Jesus Christ and talked about that in the Dance of the Heavenly Bliss.
Yes.
And then in your latest book, Dance of Eternal Rapture, you met with Jesus again. So what were the messages that he told you in both those times?
Well, he was really a very wise, compassionate, loving soul. He's a master soul. He told me that he incarnated on Earth like 2,000 some odd years ago as the person we know as Jesus Christ, and he did so at the request of the Council of Wise Ones. They felt that humanity needed sort of an extra sort of boost to get them moving on the path of spiritual enlightenment, and so they needed some help. So they recruited Jesus to incarnate, and he said, and so he did. But an interesting thing, particularly for me, I was raised as a Roman Catholic. He said, well, you know what the scriptures say, and what the Christian religion says that I was born an immaculate conception because my mother was inseminated by the Holy Spirit. He said, no, that didn't really happen. He said, I was born in a natural way, conceived, by a union of my mother and father, and so my mother was not a virgin, and excuse me, and she actually had more children after me. Mm-hmm. All of those events, of course, have been edited out of the scriptures by some of the early leaders of the church who felt that it would be better to have an immaculate conception and a virgin birth, and just because it would make a better story. And he said and contrary to what the scriptures say, he did get married. He married Mary Magdalene, and they had 2 sons and 1 daughter. Again, that was all edited out of the early Gospels to make a better story for them, because he said the early leaders of the church felt that it would be better it would show him in better light if he was reported to have been celibate all his life, because they felt that if he was married and engaged in sexual activities, that somehow would sully his halo and make him not as much of a godlike and holy person. And so that's why they did that. But he said, no, I was married, happily married, and had children, and there's a number of other things in the Gospels that they made up or edited out, but that's really the story of his life. And he said that during his the so-called lost years, like when the scriptures between the ages of I think 12 and his early 30s, when he came back into his public ministry, part of that time was spent. He traveled with his wife to Tibet and learned to get into deep meditation with a monk there, and that monk taught him how to focus his thoughts into very powerful beams of energy. That's how he performed his miracles. He could manipulate matter just through his focused thoughts, and so therefore, he could walk on water, turn water into wine, raise people from the dead. This is all that he learned from this monk in Tibet, and so he actually did those things. So that was reported correctly, and he ended up, of course, dying on the cross, as the scriptures say. And he said he could have saved himself from that with his focused thoughts, but he thought that it would make a better statement, a more dramatic statement to his followers if he actually died on the cross and then resurrected later. And so that was sort of the game plan there, and he let that happen. And I asked him, okay, well, what do you think about the Christian church? How it's developed since you passed away? And he said, well, they still do a lot of things, good core things, and teaching people about love and compassion, forgiveness, and helping the poor, and that thing. He said that's all very good, but some of the early popes, some of the early leaders sort of hijacked the agenda a bit and inserted a bunch of beliefs and rules and dogma that really didn't originate from Jesus. They just made it up, the later leaders of the church. And so he's a bit dismayed at that. Particularly things that they did, like they created a place called hell and a evil entity called the devil to scare people, to create fear in their minds, to help them control the masses. And he said that that's just wrong. He says because it's caused a lot of anguish over the years, and he really wishes that they hadn't done that. But he knows that because he was followed by humans, and humans have their own frailties, their own agendas. So he wasn't terribly surprised that happened, but he wished that some of those rules would just disappear, some of which don't make any sense. And so it was a very interesting conversation, and he was really quite frank about his life and about what he thought about the church that followed him.
That's amazing. Did he have any messages he wanted to share with the world at that time?
Yeah, he said that this is what Albert had. He sort of reiterated what Albert had been telling me all along. He said, look at you guys on Earth, humans. You're all eternal souls. You've incarnated here to learn and experience things, and you chose your life here. Before you were born, you prepared a life plan so that you could experience the things you needed or you thought you needed for your evolution. So you picked your parents, you picked your place of birth, you picked the identity of your siblings and other relatives, and the first language you'd learn, and so on. And you hope that you would sort of follow the plan to hit these challenges and overcome these challenges. And so he said, you should never feel like you're a victim. It's not when you're down and out. It's not because the universe or God is doing things to you to make your life miserable, because you picked your life. And you create your own life as you go because you have free will to make decisions. And so, as you move along, your reality is basically created by how you react to things that happens in your life. And so he said, never feel like you're a victim because you basically chose your own life. And I said, well, why would somebody choose to be born as a blind beggar in Calcutta? It seems like an awfully harsh thing. If we have free choice, why would we do that? He said, difficult for us to understand that here. On the spirit side, it makes perfectly good sense because that person, that soul, may well have needed something in that life as a blind beggar to fulfill their evolution. And it's not all that daunting to have a life on Earth, because a life of 80 years here is just a blink of an eye on the spirit side because they have no linear time there. And so he said, hard for us to understand, but everyone has chosen their life, and not everyone chooses a wealthy and cushy life, because sometimes there's not enough challenges in that life to make it to serve the soul's need. And so that's why they sometimes pick a very difficult life, what we seem to think is a difficult life. And so he basically reiterated what Albert had told me all along, that you're all here on a journey of exploration, a journey to face challenges and learn lessons. And at the end of the day, no matter what you do here, you're going to end up back in the splendor of the spirit side, where you could just look back and reflect on what you learned.
Wow. It's fascinating. And then in your latest book, Dance of the Eternal Rapture, on one of your astral trips with Albert, you also met with Muhammad, the prophet and founder of Islam. What did he tell you?
Well, that was very interesting. He was, again, much like Jesus, a very wise, compassionate, loving soul. And I asked him, when you, before you incarnated into that life, did you think you were going to start a new religion? And he said he didn't really think he would start a new religion, but he wanted to incarnate where he did. He wanted to, because he knew he was going to receive messages from the Archangel Gabriel, and he wanted to sort of be that messenger for Gabriel, and to try to help the people of that country, Mecca and Medina, to better their lives and become more loving and caring individuals. And so he didn't really know how it would all develop, but he said that, it's obviously has gone off on a huge sort of tangent, where there's now like 1.6 billion Muslims in the world. So it's really a big factor. But very interesting. He said that he's happy with the fact that his religion has expanded, but he was very unhappy with a couple of aspects of Islam. First of all, he said that he's dismayed at how a number of men have used Islam, used the religion as an excuse to subjugate women. In a lot of countries, women, they have to cover their faces, have to cover their whole body. Some countries, like Saudi Arabia, until recently, they couldn't even drive a car. A lot of the countries are not allowed to have an education or get a job, and so it's really a cruel and abusive subjugation of women. He says he never intended that. That's not in any of the Quran. He never ever preached that, and he doesn't understand how they can use his religion to justify their actions, and he thinks it's just abusive and a horrible way of treating women. So that was very interesting. Second thing he said was that in no way did he ever preach violence. He never suggested in any way that people who didn't follow Islam, Christians, Jews, and all the other people, he never ever suggested that there should be violence inflicted on them. And so he's dismayed at how some of his followers have used his religion, Islam, as a means to achieve violence against other people. And as we all know, there's civil wars going on, and there's terrorism, and a lot of it stems from extreme Islamic followers who use that religion as a justification for their violent acts. He was dismayed, just like, that's not what my religion was all about. I preach love and compassion and forgiveness, and I don't know how these guys have used my religion to get off the rails like that.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting. And I said to him, would you like to reincarnate sometime to go back and try to fix up what has gone off the rails on your religion? He said yes, he would. He's just waiting for the word from the Council of Wise Ones, and he's happy to jump back in here again.
Wow. Oh, boy. Well, right now we're going to take a very quick break and then return with Garnet Schulhauser on the Angel Quest Show here on HudsonRiverRadio.com.
HudsonRiverRadio.com, your local Rockland County station.
Listen in for a minute, an hour, or 3 to Mornings with Katie Bays, Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. on HudsonRiverRadio.com, your local Rockland County station.
Hey everybody, looking for something to do in the afternoon? Then join me, Neil Richter, in the Richter Observatory, high atop the majestic Palisades, overlooking the mighty Hudson River in beautiful Stony Point. Now, 3 full hours every weekday from 3 until 6 p.m. of news, weather, and cool classic rock. We'll get you through the afternoon at work and rock you on your ride home. That's the Richter Observatory with me, Neil Richter, right here on HudsonRiverRadio.com.
Hey Hudson Valley business owners, this is Lisa Felak from Hudson River Radio. Are you looking for an affordable and effective way to reach customers in Rockland County and beyond? Hudson River Radio is now offering advertising packages at prices that can't be beat. Weekly, monthly, and show sponsorship opportunities are all available, and we'll even produce your ad in studio for free with a prepaid commitment of only 4 weeks. Visit us online at HudsonRiverRadio.com for more information, or send me an email at lisaf@HudsonRiverRadio.com today.
Streaming live from Stony Point, this is HudsonRiverRadio.com, your local Rockland County station.
Hey, we're back. Hi, Garnet. So back with what you were saying before, do you think Jesus will come back, reincarnate here on Earth?
Well, I asked him that question too, Karen, and he said that he doesn't know. He said he'd be willing, if the Council of Wise Ones asked him to, that he will. That hasn't happened yet, but I know there's lots of people on this planet that truly hope that he would come back and help us over this rough patch that we're going through right now.
Okay, so then, can you tell us about your second meeting with Gaia, the consciousness of Mother Earth?
Yeah, again, it was Albert took me, like the first meeting, he took me on this astral trip over the North Pole. We dropped down through the ice and the seabed into a large cavern, which is where I'd met Gaia the first place, and there we had another conversation. She basically, for the most part, reiterated her dismay that humans were still being too abusive to Mother Earth and to her other creatures. You know, they pollute the planet. They're abusive to the creatures. They're abusive to one another. And she just, again, reiterated the message that humans have to wake up and realize that the course they're on could end up being very badly for the human race. We need to curtail our pollution. We need to be respectful to the other creatures on our planet and quit abusing one another, because it's just it's not something that she wants to have happen. She said that before humans arrived on the planet, she had a perfectly balanced ecosystem where everything just worked perfectly. And then when humans arrived, initially they didn't cause much problem because they had just crude weapons and they couldn't cause much pollution. But after the Industrial Revolution, then our ability to pollute the planet just increased exponentially. And we've been polluting it, ever since. And despite the fact that a lot of people and countries are trying to curtail the pollution, there's still way too much going on. And so she says that she really tries to send the message to humans that we need to cut back on our pollution, cut back on our abuse of other animals. And she reiterated that she has the power to sort of fight back, to give us a warning shot across our bow. And she can do this by increasing the number and intensity of natural disasters on Earth, like earthquakes, hurricanes, floods, wildfires, droughts, and so on. And she said she'll have to continue to increase that until we really wake up and understand what the message that she's giving us, which we have to change our ways. And so that was sort of a very compelling message. She said that she is trying to raise her vibrations of planet Earth to rise up to a higher dimension. And she says that her other creatures are in tune, in step with her desire to sort of raise the vibrations of the planet. She says what's holding her back are humans because of our negativity, our negative emotions, and all the violence and abuse that we create, on a daily basis, and that is holding her back. And so her message is, look, we all need to rise up to a higher level. Humans, you need to get your act together so that not only can you rise up, but the whole planet can. And so that was her plea. Again, a heartfelt plea to say, please take this, to me, she said, take this message back to your fellow humans, because we really have to change our ways quickly before it all ends up in a huge disaster. So it was a bit of it was a plea plus a bit of a warning to us that we better do it, otherwise things could really end up badly for us.
Oh, absolutely. Do you think she could come into our thoughts and change us a little bit?
She does project thoughts to us. She does send us messages. The problem, she says, is that most humans don't pay any attention to
listen.
it, and
Right.
so they just ignore it, don't know where it comes from. She says that her other creatures, they're very much in tune. They do listen to her thoughts, so they're in tune. And of course, other than humans, the other creatures on our planet don't pollute Mother Earth.
That's right.
We're the only ones who do that. And so the other creatures are in tune with her messages. Humans are just off on their own track. They don't pay attention, and that's been the way. Ever since they've been on the planet. There's some exceptions. Some humans do get the messages from Gaia, but most of us don't, and that's the problem.
Right. So she said it's getting worse than it's ever been, or has always been this way? I think it's getting worse, personally.
It's getting worse. Yeah. We're getting worse, and we really need to change our course and turn it around, because we're heading off. The course we're on right now is going to lead to disaster unless we change.
Right. Oh, my goodness. Okay, on another trip to the spirit side, you met with Mary Magdalene. What did she have to tell you?
Well, she was a very beautiful soul, like both, deep inside of her, and she had a very amazing, beautiful appearance. She showed herself to me as she would have appeared when she was walking the earth with Jesus. Anyway, what she said was that...
What did she look like? I'm curious.
She had sort of like amazing, sparkling blue eyes, medium brown hair, very beautiful face, just like amazing, like a movie star. She was just, and she had this radiance of wisdom and knowledge that sort of just when I'm sitting there, it was just sort of flowing towards me. I just knew that she was a very, very, basically a very saintly person. And she said, she confirmed what Jesus had said, is, I married Jesus. We had 2 sons and a daughter. Was a very devoted wife and follower of Jesus. She said that she did travel to Jesus to Tibet to study under this monk that I mentioned before. I did mention to her the fact that some historians and some theologians had described her as being a prostitute who had been reformed, a loose woman. She says couldn't be further from the truth. They totally got it mixed up. I was never a prostitute or a loose woman. I was always very faithful to my husband and was a virgin when I married him. And she said that's total mischaracterization. And so that was, she wanted to set that record straight. She said that she knew Jesus was a special person from basically the first time they met. They met at a cousin's wedding in Nazareth, and it was sort of like love at first sight, and she knew he was an amazing person, and so it wasn't hard to make the decision to marry him. And she faithfully, walked the earth with him and was his major confidant. She was, as some people have said, she was the apostle of apostles. She was sort of the first-ranking advisor to Jesus. The holy men who followed Jesus, they sort of played down her role because they didn't feel it was appropriate for a woman to have a major role in their religion. So they downplayed her role, wrote out the fact that she was married to Jesus or that she was really one of his close confidants. And so that was just the men of those early days who were rereading the scriptures to conform the church to their view of how things should work. And so her role has been downplayed, but she was really sort of Jesus' right-hand person right throughout his, from the time they were married. And after he was crucified, she and Jesus' mother, Mary, smuggled the kids out of Palestine to another country where they ended up growing up, getting married and living in obscurity. And so that's what happened to their children. So she was a very amazing sort of soul who had a very heartfelt story and was very happy to have played her role as being the spouse of Jesus Christ way back when.
We could do a whole show on this. I have to have you back on. It's amazing. And I know a lot of listeners are wondering, I asked you what she looked like. What did Jesus look like?
Well, Jesus had sort of medium brown hair, brown eyes. He had a beard. It was very much like he has been depicted in some of the medieval paintings. And he just very wise, compassionate. His eyes just exuded unconditional love. It was just like it was amazing to be in his presence. And he's, as a master soul, and he certainly was quite willing to talk to me, to answer my questions. And he's often there to greet people, souls, when they cross over from Earth plane. If they, are devoted Christians and they feel like they want to meet Jesus, he will be there to meet them and to reassure them that everything's okay and they're going to be well taken care of. So he's very busy over there, and as I said, he's ready to jump back into this planet if the Council of Wise Ones thinks it's appropriate and when they think it's appropriate.
That would be wonderful. And his way is not the only way, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's right. I mean,
that's the only thing. Most people, Christians, they were okay. This is the only way, but it's not.
No, it's not. Oh no. He quite said you don't have, contrary to what Christians say, you don't have to be a Christian in order to get to heaven.
Right.
I mean, everyone gets there, no matter who they believe in, or even if they don't believe in anything, they all get there. So it's not the only way. I mean, he's as I mentioned before, he says there's a lot of good things about Christianity. There's a lot of bad things that have happened over the years. The way they've used. Some of the people have used Christianity as a justification for, the Crusades and killing Muslims and burning villages just because they were occupying the Holy Land, and then all the people that were tortured and killed during the Spanish Inquisition. And he says that's just nonsense. Like, I've never preached that, and people should never have used, my name, my following to justify acts of brutality and violence. And so he was very upset about that. But yeah, very clearly, the Christianity, that's not the only way.
Right.
Because everyone gets to the spirit side no matter what they believe in.
Exactly. Okay. So, can you tell us about your conversation with the soul who lived on Earth but later made the ascension to the new Earth?
Yes, this was a lovely soul. Her name was Bonita. And I met her on the spirit side on one of my trips, and she told me the story of her life. And she had been living in the U.S. and she had a good job. She had a couple of kids and a loving husband, and so everything was just going tickety-boo. She couldn't have had things happen in any better fashion. And all of a sudden, disaster struck, and her husband and her two children were killed when a drunk driver T-boned them at an intersection. And so she was devastated. She was devastated. She was depressed. Then it turned to anger, and she was angry with God for letting this happen. And so she spiraled down into her own personal hell that she couldn't seem to get out of, despite being supported by her parents and her siblings. And at times she contemplated suicide because her whole world had just come apart. And then what saved her was that a friend suggested to her to go to an ashram in India and study with them. And so, as a last-ditch effort, she did. She went to India and learned how to meditate in this ashram, and that sort of turned everything around. Because then, through the meditation, she learned that hate and anger had no place. They were just negative emotions that drained her energy. So she gradually learned to forgive and love other people, and then she eventually learned to forgive the driver who killed her husband and children. And then at that stage, that was sort of the big crucial point for her, was learn to forgive that drunk driver. And then one day when she was meditating, she by herself in the garden, and she opened her eyes after, and she found herself in an entirely different place. She was no longer in the ashram, and she was basically she had ascended to the new earth because her vibrations had risen high enough that she went up to earth in a higher dimension. And there she enjoyed the very idyllic civilization that the people there on the new earth enjoy. I visited there with Albert at one time, which is described in one of my earlier books. There's the people there are all very loving and peaceful. There's no negative emotions, no crime, no violence. No one has to work. Everyone can just free to pursue their pursuits, their artistic or recreational pursuits. It's a very amazing society, a place that we should all desire to get to eventually. And so that's where she ended up because she had managed to fully embrace love and compassion. She got to the new earth, and then when her time was to leave that incarnation, she came back to the spirit side, and she said, it was a wonderful experience. I asked her if she's going to incarnate again in the new earth as a human on the new earth. She said no, she's going to incarnate again back on our earth because she felt that she could do a lot of things to help, her relatives who were still living there and other people try to make the same ascension. There was a lot of work to be done on our earth, so she was going to jump back into this one, even though, of course, she could go to the new earth again. So really an amazing story. It just shows you that we can all do that ascension. We just have to learn to fully embrace love and compassion and forgiveness, and do away with, stifle the negative emotions that tend to pop up, on a daily basis. And once we do that, our vibrations will rise up to enough to match that of the new earth, and then we'll just ascend. Mm-hmm. So it's something that we can all achieve. And so I think my visit with her was to tell everyone that yes, we can all do that. We just have to really focus on how to get there.
Right. Exactly. Yes. So, okay, on another astral trip, Albert took you to visit Earth in a parallel universe. Can you tell us what you saw there?
Oh, that was quite amazing. That was quite amazing. It was because I had asked Albert if there were, in fact, a lot of people have speculated that there are parallel universes and that Earth exists in a number of other dimensions. And Albert said yes, and he said, I'll show you one. And so he took me through what he called the interdimensional doorway, and we ended up on Earth, basically in the same time frame as our current Earth, but in a parallel universe. And he took me to New York City, and we touched down on Lower Manhattan. And what amazed me was I saw the World Trade Towers were still standing, still intact. Mm. And I said to Albert, well, is this the same year as our current Earth? He said, yes. And I said, well, how come those trade towers are still standing? And he said, this is due to a quirk in the history of that planet. And what happened was that way back when Muhammad was just a young man, he died an early death due to a freak accident. Therefore, Islam was never formed. And he said in that parallel Earth, Islam did not exist. It meant that most of the people in the Middle East who are in our Earth are Muslim. They ended up being Christian for the most part. So there are no crusades. There was no civil war in Syria. There's no ISIS, and there were no Islamic terrorists because Islam did not exist. So therefore, the World Trade Towers were never taken down. So it was really quite amazing, just by a quirk of the history of that planet. And so
that's interesting because before you said Islam was not a bad religion. It's just.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying no. Islam is not a bad religion. It's just that in that particular Earth, that parallel universe, Islam did not exist.
I see. Yes.
Yeah, just because of that quirk of history. Mm-hmm. But it still exists on our Earth, and when I was speaking with Muhammad, he was referring to his life on our Earth, where Islam was in fact created. So right. two different worlds, and very different just because of a quirk in their history. And then Albert took me to further up the island, and we dropped down into the middle of what is now Harlem on our Earth. Mm. And he said to me, have a look. Do you notice anything different? It looked like the streets were busy with people and so on. And then it hit me that there were basically no black people, no African Americans.
Oh, no.
And I said, Albert, how can this be? This is Harlem.
Yeah.
And he said, well, this planet also had another sort of quirk in its history that's different from your Earth. And what happened was back in the 15th century, England abolished slavery. and then all the other European countries followed suit. So slavery was abolished before America was basically fully colonized. There was no slave trade to America, no transport of slaves from Africa, to the New World. And so what happened was that there was no need for a civil rights movement. There was no Civil War. There's no Confederate flag. President Lincoln didn't have to emancipate the slaves because there basically weren't any. So all the only African Americans in the U.S. were the ones who sort of immigrated in a natural sort of flow, and they formed like less than 1% of the population, as opposed to 13% in our Earth. Mm-hmm. And so that was just a quirk in the history, and it was quite amazing. And everything else looked the same to me about Earth, but those are two very noticeable differences, which just goes to show you that parallel universes can be very similar, but they can be different in some very major aspects.
Right. I don't know if I like that one, because I like the different nationalities and everyone here, But anyway, what led up to it was different. So
yes.
So what did you learn from your meeting with Eloah, the voice of the source?
Well, that was an interesting meeting. It was on the spirit side, and Albert led me to this the entrance to a cave, and he said I should just go in. And I didn't know who I was going to meet or what I was going to see, but anyway, I walked into this cave, very dark, sort of felt my way along, and all of a sudden I rounded a corner and I saw this sort of a glowing ball of basically of light, of energy. And this entity spoke to me, said his name was Eloah, and he was the spokesperson for the source. And so, interesting conversation. I said, okay, tell me about the source. What is the source? He said, well, the source is the sum total of everything in our universe. It's sort of all the planets and the stars and all the life forms and all the creatures and all the empty space in between. It's everything. And he said that the source created the universe eons ago in a sort of a burst of energy. And out of this energy burst, eventually some of it can yield into mass, and it forms stars and planets and galaxies and so on. And he said the source programmed it basically so that it would sort of divide itself randomly without any direction from the source. And so the first universe was created, that it subdivided into two, and then those ones in turn subdivided. So that's why we have all these parallel universes, and they do so on a sort of a random basis, and that's how I ended up with that parallel Earth in the other dimension that I just mentioned. And so the universe continues to subdivide and expand. And the source did this because it wanted to sort of fill the void that was there before. And the source created souls, like you and I, as individual aspects of itself, and it wanted these souls to fan out over the universe it had created, to explore the universe and to enjoy and experience what it had created, because everything that we experience is experienced by the source. And so it's a way for the source to understand and enjoy the things it has created. And so that's why we're on this journey. We're sort of exploring the universe for the source and allowing the source to experience what we experience. The good times, the bad times, everything else that we experience in a journey on the denser plane. So that was very interesting. I asked him, when did the source come into being? He said, well, the source always was, always will be. Who created the source? He said, no one. The source was always there, which is really hard for us to grasp, but that's it's a very difficult concept, but it was that's what he said. And he said, once I sort of fully return to the spirit side after my body dies here on Earth, I'll be able to better understand that concept. But it was really sort of getting the basics of what the source is and what it's all about and why we were created and what our mission is. And our mission is to grow and evolve and explore the universe.
So we all have source within us, and we could create amazing miracles if we realize that.
Yes, we're all capable of doing miracles. That's one of the things that Jesus said as well, is that we're all capable of performing the kind of miracles he did. We just have to sort of learn to focus our thoughts into powerful beams of energy like he did, and we're all capable of doing that. And he said at some point, assuming that we survive this crucial point that we're going through right now, at some point in our future, humans will be able to do exactly what he did when he performed his miracles. So we're entirely capable of it, and we're entirely capable of pulling ourselves out of this mess. We just have to focus our thoughts and get our goals aligned so that we can follow Gaia's advice and follow Albert's advice and Jesus' advice to sort of embrace love and compassion, and then we can sort of move forward, raise our vibrations.
Mm-hmm. And then on one occasion, you communicated telepathically with a dolphin. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. It was it was a dolphin. Her name was Shimmers, and she was. I sort of encountered her in the Bahamas, and she we communicated by telepathy. She said, basically, dolphins, whales, and a lot of the other creatures are very intelligent, sensitive, sentient beings, who communicate with each other by telepathy. They communicate with their cousins on other planets over vast distances, many light years apart. And she just expressed her dismay, as some of the other creatures I've spoken to have, about how humans are just abusive and brutal and violent, and they wish that humans would be able to stop and listen to the messages they're getting from dolphins and whales, and understand that they really want to live in harmony with humans, but they really don't want to be trapped and killed and hunted like they have been in the past, and they want to be treated with dignity and respect. And they don't understand why humans are doing what they're doing, because they're very peace-loving, compassionate creatures who don't harm their environment, don't harm other creatures, and they just want to live their lives in a peaceful ecosystem that's balanced, without a bunch of pollution and intervention by humans. And so her message was, can you please tell your fellow humans that, we're more intelligent than you think, and in some respects, the dolphins are actually more advanced than humans because they can communicate by telepathy. Most humans cannot, with the exception of some people like you, Karen, with your psychic and medium abilities. But that's a very small exception. Most humans just can't do it, and we need to really sort of try to step up our game and get to the point where we can understand what other creatures are telling us. And once we hear their messages, then we're not going to trap them and imprison them in aquariums and water parks and make them do silly tricks, or catch them up in our nets, or make them ill through our pollution, because then we'll have a empathetic understanding of who they are and how we should treat them.
Because we are all one, and that includes everyone and everything, including every non-human animal.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
Once we realize that, I think people don't understand that in order to communicate with anyone else, whether it be a living loved one or a deceased loved one, an animal, is you have to raise your vibration to the source who you really are. So if we do that, anybody can do it.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, we all have that potential. The question is, when will we decide to do it and put our minds to doing it? That's the real issue.
Exactly. Now, this is something. There really are mermaids, and you met with one. Can you tell us about it?
Yes, I met a mermaid, and Albert had arranged this meeting, and she was a lovely person who said that mermaids, they're all over the oceans of the world. They originated when some extraterrestrials did some genetic engineering between a human and a now extinct fish on the planet. So this lady, she was from the top up, she was like a human lady. From the bottom down, she was like a fish. And she said that they had they were extraordinary swimmers. They could basically stay underwater for like 2 hours at a time. They could swim very fast. They could avoid detection by humans because they could actually read the thoughts of humans that were close by, so they knew what was coming. And so they were very adept at hiding from humans. They did not want to have open contact with humans for fear of being abused, just because they know how abusive humans have been to some animals, and so they basically hide. And she said, contrary to what some folk tales have said, where they ascribe some shipwrecks and storms and so on to mermaids, she says, totally wrong. She says, we actually have helped a lot of sailors who have been in shipwrecks. We help them get back to land so they don't drown. And she said occasionally people have seen us, but most people just ascribe that to being a vivid imagination, a legend, a folk tale. Nobody really believes we exist, and she says we're just very happy with that because we don't want a concerted effort by humans to try to find us, because if they did, they'll probably put us in a circus show or in a lab or whatever, and she said we don't want any of that. So again, a very sensitive creature, compassionate, loving. They're in tune with Gaia. They don't pollute the planet, and they just want to live in peace and harmony with Gaia and all her creatures, including humans. And she hoped that one day humans would sort of change their ways, and so that they could sort of openly have contact with us.
Fascinating. So your latest book is called Dance of the Eternal Rapture, and when is it going to be released?
It'll be released in December, so about a month from now.
And how can people find you and order this and your other books?
Okay, well, the best way is my website, which is garnetschulhauser.com.
Maybe you have to spell
hard
that.
To remember.
You might have to spell that one.
Yeah, well, okay. It's Garnet, my first name, and then Schulhauser, SCHULHAUSER. So garnetschulhauser.com. If they forget that, they can get to my website by Googling "Dancing on a Stamp" or the title of any of my books.
Well, there you go.
And on my website, there's information about all my books. You can download a free excerpt, watch a book video for each of them. There's buy links there where you can just click on it and you get to my page with all my books for sale on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, a number of the other online sites. You can click on to my various social media sites like Facebook, Google, LinkedIn. And you can also listen to the recordings of all of my previous radio shows, and this is number 128 for me. So you can listen to all the recordings on my website. Just click on the one you want, and away you go.
Awesome.
My email address is there, Karen. If anybody wants to send me a comment or a question, I'd be happy to hear from them.
Okay. And I know we were talking online about maybe coming to New Jersey to do a workshop at the Angel Quest Center.
Yes,
talk about that.
I'm very interested and
awesome.
waiting eagerly for more details from you.
I will send that to you.
That sounds
Looking
great.
forward to it. So
Yeah,
do you have any closing words for our listeners?
Yes, this always sticks to my mind. Albert said, listen, don't take things so seriously. Lighten up, enjoy your journey. You're on an adventure on this planet, and you're there to learn and experience things, and no matter what you do, no matter how many mistakes you make or how many wrong turns you take, you're always going to end up back on the spirit side. So laugh, smile, and enjoy your journey.
Yeah, awesome. So if I may, I'd like to end with a little quote you sent me from your book, Dance of Eternal Rapture, and here it is. Remember to keep on dancing, because life should be a dance of joy, an opportunity for you to grow and evolve as you make your way through this school called Earth. Dance with delight, dance with exuberance, and dance to the beat of your own drummer. Do not be afraid to break out of the comfort zone to explore new realities, because you can never become lost. All roads lead back home, no matter how many wrong turns you make. So enjoy your journey and never fear what lies ahead. Perfectly said. Thank you so much, Garnet. It's always fascinating. Thank you, and maybe you could go back to sleep.
Thank you, Karen. It's always a delight to be on your shows, and thank you for inviting me.
Have an amazing weekend.
You too.
Take care. Okay, so thank you for listening to the Angel Quest show here on Hudson River Radio. This and all subsequent shows will be offered as podcasts. You'll be able to retrieve these shows on www.hudsonriverradio.com or on my website at karennoe.com. And for more of this type of spiritual information, you also visit me on my Facebook page at Karen Noe Author. That's Karen, N-O-E, Author. So join us here next time on December 2nd at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And remember, it's always going to be the first Saturday of every month. And my guest next month will be Sean Galloway, the musician who wrote I Choose Love. And you may want to check out this amazing song and video on YouTube. And I'm thrilled that I Choose Love is now the Angel Quest show's theme song. So have a heavenly weekend, and always remember to focus on the love and comfort all around you. Angel blessings to you. Love you.
I can see greed. I can see life or death coming on strong. So what do you choose? Now I choose to love where freedom flies from my heart where the light keeps shining. And I choose to feel the whole world crying for the strength that we can rise above. I choose love. I choose love.
Streaming live from Stony Point, this is HudsonRiverRadio.com, your local Rockland County station.